I've been building air cannons since sophomore year of high school. Quite a few of them have accumulated down here over the years. Most of these kind of suck, so the goal of today's video is to build one that doesn't suck. Step 1. Go to Home Depot. So it turns out they don't like you filming in Home Depot, but anyway, here's this. Here are all the parts you're going to need to build this project. I'll put a parts list on the screen right now because that's way more helpful than just laying them out on the floor. Now a lot of these parts need to be cut or modified before we can use them. We'll start with this thing. Now this thing is very important. It's going to be the trigger for our air cannon. But how does a coaxial piston cannon work, you ask? Well, it starts in this state, with low pressure on both sides of the piston and the piston away from the inner barrel. When you add pressure, it pushes the piston towards the barrel and ends up sealing it against the end of the inner barrel. So now, there's low pressure inside the barrel sealed off from the high pressure. The high pressure is also able to leak around the piston and get into the space in between the two barrels. Then, when the trigger valve is opened, all the pressure behind the piston rushes out. This leaves it in this state where the high pressure is able to push the piston backwards and escape out the barrel, pushing the projectile at a high speed out the end. Next, we're going to need to shave down some parts. This 1-inch cap needs to be able to fit inside a 1.5-inch pipe. This adapter bushing needs to be able to accept a 1/2-inch pipe from the backside. Now we need to make the internal piston. So what you're going to do is drill a 1/4-inch hole right in the center of the bottom of the 1-inch cap that you shaved down. Then use that cap to trace a disc on the gasket material. Then cut it out with scissors. We need to make this disc fit perfectly in the 1.5-inch pipe, which means we're going to need to trim it a little bit. The gasket material needs a 1/4-inch hole drilled in it as well. Now we need to assemble the piston just like this. Now it's time to cut some pipes. PVC glue is volatile, flammable, toxic, and probably shouldn't be legal to own. Wear proper safety equipment when using it.
I
also added some pieces of foam rubber to the end of this inner barrel to keep it centered inside the outer barrel. Now that this bit is all finished, you can attach this by gluing it to the end of this bigger assembly. Now that all the gluing is done, we need to put some thread seal tape on these threads and these threads. Now the trigger can be screwed on and we can attach the inner barrel to the outer barrel. This was supposed to be a tutorial video, but I actually messed up and this does not have enough flow rate to trigger the gun. So we need to get a new one of these. Another problem is that the pilot volume is too large and the trigger can't lower the pressure in the pilot volume fast enough to pull the piston back. And that can be solved by lowering the volume of this section here. So I went through all this trouble of replacing the trigger valve and shortening the pilot volume pipe, and it turns out the piston was just sticky and needed oil. Now that it works, all I need to do is attach the stock and then test fire it. I find it best to pump up the cannon first. Now this cannon is rated for about 350 psi, but I don't have an air compressor, so I just use this bike pump that goes up to about 120. For the best results, use some type of wadding like this piece of foam I made to put down the barrel before your projectile to form a nice seal with the inside of it. Those ball bearings put clean holes through pressure-treated plywood, and they really blast out the back. The marker didn't go through the wood, it just left ink on it. And now there are little pieces of marker dust all over my floor. Check this out. A AA battery fits perfectly in the end of this barrel. You know what that means. It made a perfectly battery-shaped dent in wood. The battery itself is completely flattened. Unfortunately, I didn't get footage of shooting this monitor, but as you can see, it did some pretty substantial damage.